Hi, all. My name is Nina Josephine. I am one of the co-chairs for the Tiki Oasis Diversity and Inclusion Council. So welcome. This is the Tiki Oasis monthly series focusing on subjects of history, appropriation versus appreciation of cultures, minority cultures, Tiki culture, and mid-century Americana. The goal of this series is to provide a forum for education, knowledge, and conversation. Through this series, we invite marginalized groups to amplify their voices, to share their knowledge and experiences, and we invite advocates and allies to ask questions. We also invite all to contribute to the broader discussion on diversity, inclusion, representation, and equality in the Tiki community. As we dive into our monthly series, there are many topics to unpack, discuss, and understand that are a part of the current Tiki culture. Our topic this month is From Tapa to Tiki, Artists of Oceania, where we have assembled a panel of contemporary artists from all over the world. Super excited for that. Today, we'll explore how these artists include traditions, history, religion, and culture in their art. Through the conversation, please put your questions in the chat down at the bottom of the screen there or in the Q&A section right next to it. Also, please note that this talk today is a benefit for two super special organizations that our panelists may talk a little bit about later on, one being the Lanai Art Center and the other being the Bishop Museum. So please make your donations via PayPal to tikioasis@gmail.com. I believe that will be posted in the chat below as well, so you can click there and find more information. Now, to introduce each of our panel members today, please welcome painter, designer, and author Tom Laura, also known as the artist BigToe. Hi.
Hi, Nina. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So excited, ready for this.
Oh yes, it's a topic that's near and dear to our heart, and so we're stoked to be able to have a forum for some of our Polynesian artists. So our panelists today are Lee Cabanilla, who is in Lanai, Hawaii, and V is a sculptor that specializes in contemporary forms of the ancient art of Makaha and other sculptural work. He's on Lanai, Hawaii. And our next artist is Dalani Tanahi, and she is in Makaha, Hawaii. And she's a traditional Hawaiian kapa designer. Delani was drawn to native Hawaiian kapa making over 20 years ago and has stayed with it because of its diversity and uniqueness. It's a beautiful art form, as you'll see in these shots that are coming up right now. Our next panelist is Travis Turqueza, who is on Lanai, Hawaii as well. And Travis is a Hawaiian-based artist born on the small island of Lanai. He was raised in the California Bay Area and then moved back to Hawaii in 1999 to pursue his career in arts and education. And our next panelist is Helton John Htj, who lives in Fa'a'a, Tahiti. He was born in France and raised in Tahiti. HTJ grew up surfing and skateboarding in Paradise. Now a full-time painter, sculptor, and muralist with a solo exhibit once a year in Tahiti. So let's dive right in. I wanted to introduce, first of all, Lee Cabanilla. V, how's it going? You need to unmute your microphone.
There we go.
There you are. It's good to see you.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, so I've known V for a long time. We were just talking about running into each other at art shows before you moved back to Lanai, and we're stoked to have you here with us today. And your work is amazing. You know, I see it as the nexus sort of being the Polynesian fishhook, but then you've taken it to, you know, this fine art place that's just mind blowing with, you know, different forms with the different sea creatures. And, but I was wondering, how did you get started creating artwork in the Polynesian tradition?
Well, you know, I kind of grew up with it. Travis and I, both our grandparents worked the pineapple fields here. So those type of images have been in our heads all of our lives. And it was probably a little over 20 years ago, one of my sister's weddings, that I ran into a friend of my uncle who is actually a very famous sculptor named Richard Abdul. He's since passed away, but the first time I saw one of his pieces, I went, oh, wow. And it kind of blew my mind. And so I started doing a little research, started meeting the right people. And with his help, I was able to learn pretty much everything there is to know about the Makaha, the Hawaiian Makaha, not necessarily all the other islands, but there is a relativity there. So I was, you know, kind of born into this a little bit, just like probably the rest of the panelists. So, but for me, it was, you know, just being an artist and a designer. I had a gallery in Pasadena when I was married, and that's right when Sven's book came out. And I used to see those images in Sven's book just driving to work every day. So that instilled even more, you know, interest. But, you know, there is a line between the mainland, like, you know, the mainland and the Hawaiian style ki'i that there's a big difference, but it was always refreshing to just, you know, my 10-minute drive to work, see all the images in Sven's book. So for me, it's been a kind of a lifelong thing, but it really hit me in the head. Like I said, it was about 20 years ago when I first met Richard Abdul that I was like, okay, I got to try this. And I've just moved on from there. And I'm one of these people that can't sit and just do the same thing over and over. The repetition kills me. And people want that though sometimes, but I actually just wanted to go take it a little further, you know, deconstruct and then create something that no one's ever seen before, but keeping it familiar. So that's basically where I started and how I started.
Right on. Well, it's amazing. I was looking at that the images that we saw at the start of the show with the manta ray and the dolphins, and you know, and just seeing other things that you've done, like that hand carved Kawa guitar, where you're mixing sort of Tapa elements with the natural elements, is just a really cool, you know, fusion, and that, you know, totally speaks to Polynesian life to me. So talk about your medium. So, you know, I've seen you use a lot of bone and then also mother of pearl and shells.
Well, mostly the mediums that I use, especially now in the past few years, have all been straight from Lanai. We've got over 20,000 axis deer roaming in the island. We've got mouflon sheep horn. I use mostly 90% all local woods that are grown here and, you know, and harvested here. So basically it's mostly like bone, wood, shell. And I used to use a lot of fossil ivories, but that's a no-go now, especially in Hawaii and California. Completely illegal. So I had to kind of switch up and change. So I don't use a lot of bone anymore, actually. It's mostly just antler material, wood, and shell. I don't do much metal work because it's messy and it's not the type of organic material that I like to work in, even though metal is basically organic. Yeah. So it's mostly just natural stuff that comes straight from, you know, 10 to 15 minutes away from where I'm sitting right now.
Right on.
So it's a blessing.
Right on. And I notice you do occasionally use ki'i in your Macau.
Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit. What does that mean to you to have the ki'i images?
Well, that actually started probably about close to 20 years ago, after seeing some of the Māori pieces in the Bishop Museum, and they actually would add a haitike to their hooks, and I thought to myself, well, I've never seen anyone else do that, but there are a couple other cultures that have added that type of ki'i to their makau, but I decided I've never seen a Hawaiian one. So I tried to marry the two, and it worked out. I just did my 128th one about 2 weeks to 3 weeks ago. So it's kind of one of my personal things. It's basically a signature piece. So I borrow from the traditional ki'i and stylize it. So everything's a little more contemporary. I try not to go too ancient. There's a lot of differences in the styles, and so I just try to maintain a kind of a contemporary style without it looking like Party City, with the giant Jim Carrey, the masked teeth. So that type of thing I try to stay away from. So I try to stay a little traditional, but bring it to another level.
Yeah. I mean, is there anything, that is off limits for, in terms of island imagery that should be avoided?
There are places I don't really go, just because I don't speak that language. I only do one Māori style piece, and it's a piece that I stylize because I don't speak that language. So I'm not going to try to recreate their work. And I see it a lot in a lot of people. It's just a mishmash of styles, and basically it's its own language, and it just ends up being gibberish. And I don't want to confuse people, so I try to stay away from things that I don't understand myself. So it's one of those things where there are things that are sacred and shouldn't be touched, and there's things that are kapu that should be left alone. So I try not to get close to that line at all, ever.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
And then what do you is there anything that you want to explore? I mean, what do you see as the future of your art?
That's a interesting question, because you never know. Every day I wake up, just like you and a lot of other artists, every day I wake up with a different idea in my head. Yeah. So I'm not sure, I have a vision, but it's just a bunch of things going like this. So I have to figure out, every day I try to figure out, what am I going to do today? So it's a constant trying to recreate and reinvent. And so, like I said, I don't like doing repeats on things. I don't like doing multiple pieces. I don't like doing 10 of each one. So I'm not sure where we're going, but I know we're going somewhere.
Right on.
Pretty much.
Right on. That's awesome. Well, I'm a huge fan, and your art's amazing. And where can people? Where's the best place for people to find you on the web?
They can hit my Instagram. It's Cabanilla Makau, MAKAU, at /Instagram.com. I also have a website, which is the same. Basically, it's CABANILLA MAKAU.com. And there was something in there about you guys wanted us to shout out our retailers. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, both Travis and I have a local representative gallery. It's a high-end gallery. It's called Mike Carroll Gallery. And then I've got various accounts. Probably one of my bigger ones is MauiHands.com. And it's a series of galleries. Somebody had just said on the chat they didn't get my website. So if you want me to spell it out again, I can do that. It's not a problem. Well, I just noticed somebody popped up.
Yeah, we've got it in the chat. So okay. I think they'll be able to find you from that.
Great. And if they find any of my social media, you'll be able to find the retail locations that I sell to.
Perfect.
There we go.
Right on. Well, thanks for joining us. We may come back and then do a little bit more of a forum, but I wanted to introduce everybody else. So hang tight, and thanks very much.
Hey, mahalo, Tom. No worries.
Yeah, my pleasure. Okay, so next up, I wanted to introduce Dalani Tanahi from Makaha, Hawaii. Welcome.
Morning.
Thank you so much for joining us. And again,
thank you.
Delani is a traditional Hawaiian kapa artist. And, you know, sometimes we hear that referred to as Tapa. Tell us how you got started in creating artwork in the Polynesian tradition. You have a very interesting story.
Well, my mother is from Maui originally, and then she defected and moved to the mainland. But so I was born and raised in San Diego, which actually had a very pretty vibrant Hawaiian community. We had a Hawaiian Civic Club of San Diego there, and we were involved in that a lot. And then we would always come home to Hawaii to visit my mom's family and parents and everything. So growing up, I was an artist in illustration and things. I like to draw, I like to sculpt, I like to do, you know, everything. When my dad dug the backyard to build a koi pond, we found adobe in there. So we pulled all that up and, you know, we're sculpting and doing things with that. So when I moved here to Hawaii when I was 18, and I was in college, and we went to Bishop Museum, and that was the first time I saw Hawaiian kapa. I was familiar with Tongan kapa. I had been given one as a gift, and even in the 4th grade in San Diego, we had a class making our own tapa cloths out of brown paper bags. We colored them and smashed them and made them soft and things. So I actually attribute my earliest kapa learning to 4th grade in San Diego. But so when I saw that kapa, I thought, you know, this looks really interesting and different. I'd never seen anything, you know, bark cloth from the South Pacific has some very strong elements that once you know them, you kind of always know them. But the Hawaiian one was really different, and the types and their variations and their evolutions in that art also. So, you know, I don't know how we survived in those days without Mr. Google to grant our every wish. You know, it literally is a genie in a bottle. Like, find it, get it, buy it. So I actually had to wait 15 years before I could find somebody, or before somebody found me, or how that all connected, where I could start learning. Because you couldn't just look in the yellow pages under, you know, kapa makers. That wasn't. So eventually there was this girl named Kawa Iona Uioka who was teaching kapa making, how to make the tools. And I was so excited. It was like, oh my gosh, 15 years I've been waiting. The journey begins. So we did this weekend class, trying not to eviscerate ourselves, sitting on the curb, you know, trying to carve our beaters. And when that class was over, she gave us baby trees and she said, great job, and see ya, go for it. So later, when I was part of the Kapa Coven, I asked her, you know, dude, what was up with that? How come you didn't teach us how to make kapa? And she said, you know, I told you about the kapa. I got you making your tools and gave you some plans. But if you wanted more than that, you need to go find that. And in my, you know, over 25 years of doing this, this is absolutely true. I have been teaching this entire time, but the people who are actually able to go on and become not just a kapa maker, but a practitioner have been fairly few and far between. But, you know, it's okay. It's not for everybody, but so it's all good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, in this whatever we call this mainland tiki tradition, the kapa marks are so ubiquitous. You know, from you know the cross marks and the shark's teeth and just all the different shapes. I always wondered if well, I assume that that's all language. And all of that means something. I have a kapa from Samoa, from my Samoan relatives, that has marks on it that I know probably mean everything, but you know, when I'm out there, I always forget to ask them to explain, you know, all the meanings of the different marks. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, you know, like how V was saying that a lot of things we see now end up being kind of mishmashes of things. A lot of the tribal tattoos, tribal look things, all of that kind of stuff. When you look at it and break them down, you'll see here's a Samoan design element, here's a Marquesian design element, here's a Tongan design and a Hawaiian design, and they're all crammed together in a single piece. And it is. I've had people send me images like that and say, can you tell me what this means? And, you know, I can be all kind-hearted and say, you know, I would say that's a nice representation of all of our Polynesian brothers and sisters joining together in wham, wham, wham. But I'm not that nice. And so I say, you know what? It's bubbles. It's all bubbles, means nothing, throw it away. Because all you did was take elements of everybody's stuff and stick it together. But, you know, it's art, right? And in art, we take things, we break things, we remake things. And that's what art is. So I can't be too kind like that.
Yeah.
In Hawaiian design, so, you know, Tongans and Samoans and Fijians and Marquesians and a lot of these guys who never did stop making their kapa, who continued to pass the information of manufacture as well as design meaning, they never did stop. It may have gone up and down, but it never stopped. Whereas in Hawaii, you know, after contact, that was, that was that. And so many things happened. So Hawaiians didn't immediately stop making kapa. They actually spent another almost 100 years innovating on their kapa based on getting metal to work tools in a different way and seeing fabric that you know was being brought over and innovating so that when we look at kapa that Captain Cook gathered to kapa that they were making by the turn of the century, it's very, very different. And they didn't have problems doing this. However, it also, because we completely did stop probably by the early 1900s, and in that time, nobody was making it, or if they were, people may have just been doing their own thing. But as a culture, nobody was making it, nobody was teaching it. So none of us who do it now have an ancestral connection to it. So when we make things, even if I go to Bishop Museum, if I go look at the bamboo stamps that have the markings on it, no idea what it means. When people ask me, what does this mean? I don't know. When people commission me to make a kapa and they say, this is what they say, okay? Can you make a kapa that talks about how I recovered from cancer? Can you make a kapa that talks about the personalities of my 4 children? Can you make a kapa that talks about the personalities of these Hawaiian gods? You know, crazy bubbles things. Now, I look at a stamp with a carving. Here, let's look at this one here. These kind of little designs. There is nothing that said this design means a glioblastoma cancer cell that is going to be destroyed and we can make this happy kapa for this guy.
Yeah.
So, you know, as a practitioner, I have to re-envision, or not even, because I like to use the traditional stamps, but I have to make these metaphysical, metaphorical meanings that aren't just, okay, here's a triangle, it means a mountain, it means a shark's tooth, it means an island, because it can also mean the thing you can't get over, the mountain we're trying to preserve, the awesome thing that I accomplished. So you got to look at designs in, you know, not necessarily only as a visual form, but the thing it means. Can you make a kapa that talks about, I'm going through this thing and I want to embrace my divine feminine, but make a kapa that talks about that. So you see, you got to be able to kind of expand your storytelling, cultural understanding, artistic leaning repertoire.
Yeah.
A few words.
Yeah. And I mean, that's amazing. Thank you. That's a wonderful insight. I also love how you use so much color in your kapa. Is that something that you see embracing and developing more as you go forward with your artist exploration?
The color use of colors?
Yeah.
Well, in the Hawaiian color palette, it was kind of broader. There were more colors, but as you know, with natural dyes, a lot of them are very fugitive. And because we're painting literally on bark cloth, there isn't mordants as we know it that are used for fabric, because fabric is treated with a mordant, and then that is what locks colors to it, so that you can wash your clothes over and over again and not lose the color. But in Kapa, one of the issues, in Hawaii, so many things were very stratified, very almost case-like. The ali'i controlled everything. The maka'inana, the rest of us, worked to take care of the ali'i, because the ali'i were the ones who talked to the gods. The gods were the ones who sent the rain and the things and stuff. So there was this whole big, circle of understanding of how that worked. The very beautiful kapa would have been made for the chiefs. The chiefs had issues about other chiefs, and this was the thing, always wanting to take each other's land, women, resources, mana, your power, your essence. And one way to do that was to get a hold of a piece of your kapa. So chiefly beautiful kapa was destroyed for the most part. So it didn't matter if it was color fast or not. You couldn't wash it, and it was going to be destroyed. So, bringing these traditional ancient things from back then and trying to incorporate them now, people, they love the idea of the kapa and the pounding the trees and the sitting and the gathering the dyes and making these things. But a lot of these dyes are not color fast for where they end up now, which is in some corporate office, in some place with big windows and lots of natural light, which are going to fade your kapa. So we've had to incorporate, inks, paints, but the palette itself is pretty true. Like, the blue in this one is from a blue, a little berry called uki uki. It's a native lily. And we get yellows from like the noni tree, the olena, the turmeric, different things like that. So it's a true palette, but to make it actually last for modern use, we do have to beef it up. Some of the girls were just like, forget it, I'm just going straight to acrylic paint. And just, because in 10 years, you still want to see that design. Whereas if you use straight traditional dyes, you wouldn't.
Oh, fantastic. That's awesome to hear about the different natural pigments. So thank you very much. Let's move on. I would love for you to hang around, in case we come up with you. I'm sure we'll have some questions from the panel later.
For sure.
But thank you very much. And at this time, I'd like to introduce our next panelist, which is Travis Turqueza. And Travis is on Lanai, Hawaii as well. Welcome, Travis. Thank you for joining us. And, before we get into it, I wanted to read your artist statement, because I absolutely love this. Travis says, art has been a huge part of his life for as long as he can remember. It's influenced who Travis is as a person and giving him a purpose. He is inspired by Hawaii's people and culture, and he uses it as a way of keeping stories and traditions alive. I absolutely love that. And as we saw in your artwork, you have a very narrative quality to your work. And I'm sorry. Anyway, there's my dog. So anyway, so I just wanted to ask you how you got started creating artwork in the Polynesian tradition.
So I'm from this island. My parents divorced when I was really young, and I grew up back and forth between here and the Bay Area. And in '99, I moved back. So, but I came back with kind of a tourist amount of knowledge when it came to culture, but a little bit more. I'd studied artists like Americana, and I'd heard stories from people. But I had an idea of what I thought Hawaiian culture was. And I came back here with that, and I made a family. And when you make Hawaiian babies, you kind of want to make sure they're educated in the right way. I was working on an art piece, and the story that I had heard about the piece that I was working on didn't make sense with the references that I was looking for. I was working on a helmet, and at that time, I thought that helmet was a warrior's helmet. Everybody had it hanging from their rearview mirror. And if you go and look at Herb Kane's depictions of wars, that helmet does not exist. So I was confused. I went and found an uncle, and he gave me a book, and that book changed the whole way I looked at Hawaiian culture. I realized that I had no idea what real Hawaiian culture was. I needed to learn it for myself. And so it was just books, and at first, and you kind of talk to people, and what they said makes sense. And then I found a couple of friends. I found Steve, and that guy had the same mentality as me. And it was, oh, look at this book and look at that book. And next thing you know, like, we have a crazy foundation in the culture. And I got to sit in on some amazing circles. You know, in 2013, I went to the Ahakane conference, and I got to sit in on a circle with Sam Ka'ai, and I got to hear about Hokulea's first voyage down to Tahiti, and just that whole getting the information from the source and then doing something responsible with that information is really important. You know, it has to change. It has to change, but you need to change it responsibly, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I really, you know, in addition to just the narrative education quality of our artwork, one of the features that I like on your social media is your Did You Know series, where, you know, you're asking people or, you know, explaining people different ideas about, you know, Hawaiian culture. How did that come about?
So those posts on my social media are actually not mine. I get tagged in those posts. They are that book that I was talking about. It's Men of Ancient Hawaii. Is written by Lucia Tarallo Jensen. She is the one behind those posts. And when it comes to looking at Hawaiian culture, that's my go-to, her books. And she makes those posts, and she's trying to do the very same thing that we're doing right here, which is spark you need to really understand what you're talking about. And she's done the research, and that it's this conversation that she's sparking on in those posts.
Oh, cool. Well, I just found it fascinating. And, you know, I loved like one of the pieces that we saw in the preview of when we were talking about your work and your introduction was like the genesis from the ki'i carver all the way to the modern artist. And, you know, I think it's really cool, you know, as you're saying, the education that you have the heritage in your art. Are there things as a Hawaiian artist that you feel like that you wouldn't include in your artwork?
Me personally?
Yeah, is there stuff that's off limits just because it's you know too sacred, or?
Well, there are things that I won't do because I don't know about them, okay. Right? You know, but and there, like, if you come and ask me for a thing, like if you come and ask me for a tattoo design, like unless I know you, I'm not gonna to do that thing. There's a level of energy involved. You know, I have a deep reverence for those traditions, and doing that thing it takes a lot of energy, you know. So my off limits are only personal. If it doesn't appeal to me, if I don't think you understand it in a lot of ways. When I do graphic design, I end up talking people out of things, you know, like, oh, you want me to do this, but that's not really what that would look like. Yeah. I don't know if that would be, you know, like, yeah. I try to correct people.
Yeah, so it's not so much an idea of that something is kapu. You just want to use it in the right way and the.
Yeah,
to honor tradition.
I'm not trying to perpetuate misconceptions,
Right.
right? Like that's, if I know that what you're asking me isn't what your ancestors meant, then I will let you know that. And if you still want me to do that, then I can walk away from the project, no problem.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't want me to do it correctly, then I'm not going to do it. I'm sorry.
Right. So, so I know you're involved in education now through, as we discussed earlier, the Lanai Art Center.org that is one of our beneficiaries today. But where, I mean, do you have like a 5-year plan? I mean, what do you see as your journey going forward as an artist?
More, just more. We're creating something special on Lanai when it comes to a true artist community, like with Vince coming back home and me being here, and there's something really special happening here. And I don't know where, just more.
Right on.
More mediums, more.
Sounds good. And you know, I just realized I spaced on asking Delani for to share what her social media contacts were, but I'm noticing that they are in the chat. So people, please do go and check out Dalani Tanahi's Instagram and social media contacts. And then Travis, we're gonna also put it in the chat. It's there now, but where can people find you on the interwebs?
You can, Instagram is my main social media at Terkaza. Slide into the DMs if you really want to talk to me. Okay,
fantastic. All right, well, let me introduce our last couple artists. But thank you so much. I'm super stoked to meet you and to be introduced to your artwork. I'm a big fan now, and we'll talk to you in a minute. So next up, I want to introduce Helton John Htj from Fa'a, Tahiti, and Htj is a multidisciplinary artist. As I said before, he was born in France and raised in Tahiti, and we got to look at your super cool surfboards and key images, but you know the connection between France and Tahiti is, you know, legendary and super fascinating to me. But how did welcome and how did you get started creating artwork in the Polynesian tradition?
I started earlier on bodyboards and surfboards to draw for my friends and for me. And after I started to cut the surfboards and going a bit further.
Right on. And yeah, those carved surfboards are just super cool. I imagine you probably get a lot of broken surfboards.
All my friends surf, so I have a lot of canvas all the time.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, I see a couple canvases there waiting. I don't know if those are waiting to be ridden or to be.
No, those are mine. I just put something in the background.
Right on. It looks awesome. So you have so many different sort of mediums that you work in. What do you see as your primary medium and style?
I don't know. I change often. I change often because I don't want to do the same thing. So I go for painting for a week or two, and after I go some carving, and I do also graphic design. So I change all the time to do different things.
Right on. And so I mean, do you, what is the importance of the heritage in your work? Do you feel like you're bringing the Tahitian sort of mana as a cornerstone of your artwork?
I arrived as a baby, a French baby in Tahiti, which is a colonized country. Yeah? And arrived as a baby here, and I always had all those visual environment of Polynesian culture, which I respect a lot, and I try to don't offend while I'm creating things. I'm very interested in the Polynesian culture, but I try to be respectful and don't do mistakes.
Yeah.
But
Right on.
I really like the fact that you can create art that, because Tahiti now we have McDonald's, it's like everywhere, you know, everything is being globalized. So I like to create things that show Polynesian traditional culture and that modern life we lived in now. So there's a lot of things that goes that way in my work.
Right on. Do you find yourself responding to the folk the cultural touch points of of Tahiti for the ocean gods and the Cook Islands gods, as a person who spends a lot of time in the ocean?
I try to make my own because we have a lot of tiki carver and patu tiki tattoo artists here that research a lot for the meanings of each signs and everything, and I prefer to do it my own way, try to be different, just produce something visually different than 100% traditional. So all the things I use are mostly trash and broken surfboards, broken skateboards. Try to reuse a lot of stuff. And I was in graffiti. I started graffiti here like 20 years ago, which is something that really comes from the urbanization. It's not the island things, but here in Tahiti, graffiti is huge now. So there's all those visual things that, I don't know, I grew up in the 90s here, so that's what my environment was. So it's a mix of a lot of different things. So I always try to make something different, not too traditional and not too different, but it's hard to find the balance between those things.
Yeah, I think that's what we're all sort of trying to figure out as well. Right on. Well, your work's amazing. Where do you what kind of things are you looking forward to exploring in the future? What kind of art?
We just made an exhibition at the Musée de Tahiti et ses îles, which is the biggest museum here. And clearly the thing I want to do is make bigger pieces, try to make big installation and just going bigger and further every time, every year.
Right on. And well, I would like to have you hang around in case we have, because I'm sure we'll have some questions at the end here.
For sure.
And HTJ, we have put your social media links in the chat, but can you also tell people where the best place is to find your work and follow you?
If you come in Tahiti, I'm represented by the Gallery Winkler in Papeete, and also, yeah, on the social media, the links you gave are my places I show my work on internet.
So Instagram, HTJ Designs.
Yeah,
Right on.
and I
Well,
have a Facebook page that has the same name also.
okay, fantastic. Well, thank you very much. I think
Thanks to you for
yes,
inviting.
it's absolutely our pleasure. So we also have one more artist that we're going to try to get in here, Stephen Koa Kakaio, who I'm hoping has joined us. And there he is. Stephen, you made it.
What's up, Tom?
Aloha, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Okay, so since we didn't get a chance to introduce you earlier, let me do the official intro. Stephen was born and raised in California and now resides on the island of Molokai. Stephen is a multidisciplinary artist with a focus on illustration and graphic design. You know, I'm not sure. Oh man, is that the ocean behind you?
Yeah.
I'm so jealous.
I got Delani in the background too over there.
Oh, there's your boys.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. So there's V and Travis waving in the background.
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
Oh, so tell us, how did you get started creating artwork in the Polynesian tradition?
Honestly, I've been drawing since I was like 5, 6 years old, and my parents divorced real early, just like Travis. So I had a big back and forth between both sides. But my grandfather and my grandmother were both born and raised on Molokai, and they were just astounded by Herb Kane's work and always had his books out, paintings, and they would read these books to me. Like, they would read me children's books, but they were reading me this stuff too. And like, more so talking about it and, oh, this is so amazing or so in awe. And they couldn't touch on what was amazing about it. They just knew there was something there. And eventually I started like copying those things. So I have drawings from like 7, 8 years old of like King Kamehameha and different warriors and stuff. But yeah, it started real early, seeing the Hawaiian strength t-shirts and all these different things. Like Travis said, it was a little confusing at first, but the more I dug into it, it just became part of me. I've been drawing this kind of stuff since 5, 6 years old, and I'm still refining it to this day. So it's been a long journey, and I still got a lot more time to go.
Yeah, right on. Well, what's your primary medium? What kind of work do you mostly do?
I usually pencil and ink. I've been doing a lot of digital painting lately. I do acrylics, and I've been trying to dive into oil painting, but I just don't have the studio space right now. So I'll get there though.
Yeah, oils can be a just an amazing medium to get the depth and you know.
It definitely is. I got my feet wet in it and just never got back to it, but I think about it every day, and I'm waiting to get back into it. So, but besides that, it's graphic design, a lot of sketching, digital painting.
Right on. Oh, that's amazing. And you also, similar to what Travis does, you have a lot of narrative, cultural, traditional history and religion in your art. Can you talk about the importance of the heritage in your art?
For me, it really was like started as a personal journey, because I mean, growing up, I grew up in California, you know, like Travis, I was going back and forth, but I went to school out there. So, and in the Silicon Valley, you had I probably went to school with more nationalities than you could think of off the top of your head in like 10 seconds, all of them. And I was the only Hawaiian in school until I was in like 9th grade, till I got to high school. And then there was another friend, so he was older than me. So, and then when he graduated, had one more student that was from Hawaii. And they both moved out here now. So one's on Kauai, one's on Oahu, and I'm on Molokai. But there's literally 3 of us. And I don't think either of us, we were all 3 at one time at that school, because one had graduated, one just showed up, and I was in the middle. So people would ask like, oh, how do you pronounce this? How many islands? And just kind of constant ridiculous questions, and my name was always getting butchered. And like always once in a while, there's somebody that come and they pronounce it correctly, but I came so accustomed, like, you know, don't worry about it. It's not an easy name to say, all this, but I really needed to know, you know, I'm not only Hawaiian, I have a mix of races, but I knew all about that stuff. Like, I know about Norway, Spain, England, and different, whatever my nationalities are. But what I didn't know about was Filipino and Hawaiian. And my grandmother she's full-blooded Filipino, but grew up Molokai. So she didn't even, all her Filipino knowledge was kind of from younger days. And she still, you know, she danced hula and was really accustomed to the Hawaiian culture. So that it was a part of me, and I couldn't explain it. And I couldn't explain it confidently and clearly. So I've just been spending years like diving into it. There was a point where I dived out of it and went through some like tumultuous times and stuff, but it's what brought me back. And it's really, you know, even when you get into like spiritual stuff or religion, it's all about your family, knowing where you're from and your roots. And so that just came a part of me. That was like number one. You know, I couldn't continue life without figuring out who I am, where I'm from. And if all these things out in like the public media, I feel weren't properly portraying the culture, I would just steer away from it. I start critically thinking and ask myself, like, okay, there's no way, like Travis said, that this Ipu gourd helmet was used as a warrior's helmet. And, you know, maybe instead of like focusing my attention on all the rear view mirror decorations and Hawaiian strength t-shirts, maybe I should dive more into like find mo'olelos and stories and people who knew about this. And like, lo and behold, Herb Kane recreated that piece, and there's a whole section about just that piece in those helmets. So I pretty much took it upon myself to just learn everything myself. And it was kind of a dangerous thing because I didn't have other people to reference from. But when I did, I started asking really good questions and then keep correcting and building and developing. And I got a lot of projects I want to do that have been on my mind for years now. So this has been it's really like my artwork, and my company is a reflection of my personal journey and my philosophy. So it's been a pretty interesting journey, and I'm still learning about myself. So it's good though, having fun and staying busy.
Right on. Well, and just kind of to have everybody's opinion on this, or take on that as Polynesian artists, are there things that you treat as kapu or are too sacred to use in your art, or do you feel like your responsibility as an educator is to bring all of the narrative together in your art?
I definitely, there's some stuff that I probably, if I don't do it right away and it's on my mind, I like try to figure it out. Like, why won't I do it? Why do I feel that it's this way? Why do I feel that other people might get mad, upset, or who's over this? And why do I care? And then I gotta just, there are some things, but I feel like my ultimate goal is, like you said, option B, to bring it all together and bring it to light. I don't need to show complete details, but there's just a lot of stuff that was not known, and we should know about it. And even if we don't agree with it, I feel like it's something to reflect on. I think one of the main ones is like the iconic relationships from back in the day. Like there was some homosexual activity, but that's such a taboo subject, kapu subject in modern times. So I just I don't go there. Like I have friends and family that, they chose their path and everything, and I can't judge them for that, but I'm still trying to figure out how in my final life project, how I will bring this to light without hurting people's feelings or making people upset or diving into that. So,
Yeah.
but besides that, there's only a few things, so not too much.
Yeah. Yeah. In some of my travels, I was interested to see, like in Samoa, you know, the fa'afafine is just sort of a part of the culture. And so, you know, gender issues they're just not as hung up on it as, you know, maybe we've been in Western culture. So
I feel like they had thousands of years to reflect on it and then eventually not care, where we're still in the first couple centuries, we're infants on that subject. So it's
totally.
I understand that for sure too.
So they're trying to figure it out. Okay, well, I did want to change gears, but before I do, I do want to let people know where they can find you on social media, Stephen.
So on Instagram, you can just look up Kava_roots, ROOTS, and then Facebook, same name. And you can also look up my personal name. It's my full name, Stephen with a PH, Koa, KOA, Kakaio, KAKAIO.
Oh,
so just find those on, it's linked with my brand name. I have a website, kavarootsintl.com. You can also find my work on there. So, and if you lose any of those, check out Google. Just search me up on Google.
Yeah, and we'll also post all this on the Tiki Oasis social media, so you can find Stephen that way too. Okay, so I wanted to change gears a little bit, and we want to. I'm not sure we got Stephen's work when we first did the intro. So what I wanted to do is bring up the artwork from everybody and turn everybody's cameras on, all the artists, and have you guys talk about your work if you want to. So we would start with V, and I think the order is V, and then Stephen, and then Delani, and then Travis, and then Helton John. So if you guys could all turn on, and then maybe if I hope we can work this out technically. If BigToe can put up the slideshow of their work again. So first up is V, and do you want to talk about your work?
Sure, no problem. Well, that piece is actually one of my signature pieces there. That piece was in the, I think it was the 2019 Hawaii Craftsman's, it's called the Visible Hand Show. That's actually local Milo wood, but there is a material in the eyes, which is actually New Zealand power shell. And it represents a ohana, or basically a family of dolphins, a pod, which is basically an ohana. So that's where the narrative of that piece was meant to go. This one was a client of mine in North Carolina who throws these ideas at me all the time. And he wanted a manta ray that had a shark on it. And it took a couple weeks, but I was like, you know what? I think I got it figured out. So if you look closely at that image, it's the shape of a manta ray, but it's actually two sharks. There's two mono going each way, which create the wings of the manta ray. It's kind of hard to see. And I've had people look at this piece and not see that. They just see a manta ray. So that's kind of fun. That if you look deeper, you'll actually see, oh, wait a minute. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
So yeah, he's a great client. He always throws crazy stuff at me, and I usually can pull it off. Sometimes I have to, like Travis said, I have to talk them out of it and give them better ideas. But this one stemmed from a challenge. This one's actually a special piece. This one's actually has started a little trend with my clients, how they all want the he'e or the octopus on their pieces now. So really difficult piece, but that's actually a real gold pearl. That's kamani wood, local kamani wood with deer antlers. So that's the axis deer antler that's on the barb point there. And just as I explained earlier, I'd like to take the traditional forms and reinvent them and create things that no one's ever seen before. So that piece is actually called Guardian of the Momi. So it's the Guardian of the Pearl.
Oh, it's just gorgeous.
Thank you. And then that's the Tiki Mako that I had mentioned earlier, where I borrowed from the Maori and added the Hawaiian element to it. So it's actually a Hawaiian shaped barb with the ki'i of lono. So that's one of my signature pieces. Like I was saying, that I just did my 128th one just a few weeks ago.
Man.
So I don't do a lot of them. So in 15 years, I've done 128. It seems like a lot, but it's really not. And that's actually a shark hook version. All of the Polynesian cultures had a way to catch a shark. So this is actually the same piece that you just saw, but it's in a shark hook style, because the Kahiko Hawaiians had shark hooks that were 2 feet, 3 feet tall, some of them. And it was always a wood shaft with a bone barb or an ivory barb. So I borrowed from that to create that image there as well. So that's pretty much a Hawaiian image.
Awesome. Thank you so much, V.
You're welcome.
So here's Steven's work. And Steven's microphone's off. I don't know if he's had to disappear. So Steven, if you're still there, turn your microphone on. If not, maybe we should fast forward to the next artist, or give Steven a chance to come on here. But I love there. Well, no, that's Travis. I saw a flash over there on the side. But I love Steven's natural images here, and the fact that he's showing us his 3 to 10 minute gestures of local birds, super well observed. This is that was definitely a favorite. The Samoan style boar tooth tattooing on some poor pain enduring person. A lot of mana happening there, and the Hawaiian warrior, of course, Ali'i, no longer wearing the gourd helmet. Those feather cloaks are just mind-blowing. The idea of how much effort went into those. Those compared to the royal vestments of European kings, for sure. Oh, there's Steven. Who's you still?
Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. We've got this one beautiful Ali'i image.
Yeah, so that's I had a portrait, and I was just kind of, as it developed, I just called that Pi'ilani, and that's one of the paramount kings of Maui. That helmet is really, I guess that's a Maui style. So each island had different style of mahiole or crested helmets that the chief wore, and it's kind of like languages. Everybody get different accents and styles for each place. So to my understanding, it represents like the rays of the sun coming from his head. And Pi'ilani was considered the son of Ku. There was this weird situation surrounding his birth, and everybody knows that Kamehameha was the custodian or kia'i of Ku, but before that, this was Pi'ilani was considered the son of Ku, and I think that had a lot of effect on his name in his life. But yeah, this is just a portrait of him. This one right here is called "The Shark Going Inland Is My Chief," and I have a book actually written by Patrick von Kirch, and it's titled that. And this just, I don't really name my pieces till after, so I created this, and that was just something that stuck out in my head. Just a close-up of the detail. And that's acrylic painting that's actually the first documentary that was ever created, was in Samoa in the, pretty sure it's like real early 1900s, but this is a tattoo scene of them doing a ceremonial tattoo, the pea, on a male figure, and that picture has just been in my head for years, and I had to eventually crack out the acrylics and start painting it. So that piece is actually unfinished. I got about 10% more to go, but I don't know, it's definitely fine the way it is right now. Sketch portrait of King Kamehameha V. Just a relatively quick one. These are just quick live observational illustration studies of the Elepaio.
Right on. Well, thank you for popping back in.
You got it. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So here's Delani's work. And hopefully Delani is back.
I'm back. So this particular piece was a commission. My friend's mom, who is in her 90s and decided that she wants to make sure she's ready to go when she goes and leave in proper Kappa style. So this piece of Kappa was made to hold her ashes when she passes away. She's quite alive and well now, but just wanted to be ready. And it's dyed in Olena, the turmeric dye. And you know, it's a special thing for us, not only to create artwork that hangs up, you know, in some place, but to create the work that our kupuna, our ancestors, actually did, of making things that were covering for when we left this world. We make them to catch the babies when they enter. We make them to clothe you when you leave. So we've made pieces for repatriations when they found bones, you know, building hotels and malls, and we do kapa for that. And then kapa for people who, you know, pass away in contemporary times, and likely they're just going to cover it and drop it in the ocean, but that's all good. And then, you know, a big part of my artwork, especially kapa, because it was, I don't like to say lost, but it was, you know, put aside, and it didn't have a place for a while. Teaching it is really important part of this art. And I tell people, you know, I'm going to tell you everything I know, everything I keep knowing, because I'll be dead one day, and I don't want this being a lost art again. That's not going to be part of my fault if it all disappears. So I teach. I've taught the entire time. I actually started as a teacher. And so these gals are working on their some of their tools, oiling them up. They did the sanding and everything. And this was actually during the pandemic. So masks for not breathing the sawdust, as well as not spreading germs to each other. But people appreciated being able to do that. This is a piece that's in a new learning center in Nanakuli on Oahu. It was kind of a departure for me. I tend to be very traditional, because, you know, in Kappa, the design to me, especially as an illustrator, I mean, my thing to draw all the time was dragons and horses and guys skateboarding and guys surfing and doing stuff like this. Geometrics and abstracts were the thing I never did, never. So I've had to embrace geometrics and abstract all this time, because the design to me is what ties it to the kappa and makes sure that you don't not see the kappa, that the kappa doesn't become a canvas or a piece of paper, that the kappa is integral through the design. So you'll see the design, but if you keep looking, then you start to see the watermark of the kappa that was beaten in, and you start to see the variances and the things about what kind of paper is this, what's up with this kind of thing. So this was kind of just a crazy piece. People really liked it. I was like, wow, I should maybe do more of these. But I'm like one of the other guys who said, yeah, I don't like doing the same thing over and over. And this one is a very traditional design. I did find this design. It's from the museum. It's also a pre-contact design. So it doesn't have all the little small printing as done with the ohikapala, the bamboo stamps. So this is all hand painted, all natural dyes. The reds are the clay, the alai, and the yellows are, I think this yellow is also a clay. And then the black is squid ink, which I discovered is on Amazon. Yay! It's the food grade one that they mix in the noodles, but also a great dye. And I'd have to get my fisherman friends to catch me an awful lot of cuttlefish to get that little jar of ink that I will stretch out for weeks and weeks to make it last. And then this was some other little crazy, not exactly traditional look, but the kappa looked really nice, so I didn't want to over embellish it. I kind of just did this very simple thing, all natural dyes. This orange is from achote, which was a plant brought here by the Puerto Ricans and the Filipinos. They use it in their food. It's a fuzzy brown pod with all these little orange seeds in it, so that makes that color. And then that uki uki lily, the berries of that. And I think that yellow is clay. And then last year, 2019, I think, you know, like I said, I use Mr. Google for everything. And one day Mr. Google came to me and said, hey, we're doing our spotlight birthday thing on Israel, Kamakaviva Ole. So can you do some kappa for us? And wow, that was so fun and so exciting. And they asked me for goofy things like, can you make a design for lemon drops and rainbows? I'm like, yeah, totally, because you know Hawaii was all loaded with lemon drops. And there wasn't really a rainbow design. I spent hours agonizing over making a rainbow design that also matched the stamping we do and matched the way we interpret design. So it was very simple, and you look at it and go, why, what was the problem? But to me, it had to work. So you can go look this up too. If you Google it, and Google you can watch the video that they did and had the kappa in it. And that was kind of my woo-woo kind of big deal thing I got to do. And that's been kappa world for me. Just people think all kind of crazy things. Like these guys say, people think of stuff and they're like, hey, can you do this? And I'm like, hey, sure, I never have, but let's do it. So all exciting, fun stuff.
And here's Travis.
Ooh. Where's Travis?
Travis is here. Travis has his microphone off though.
There
he is.
you go. Can you guys hear me? See me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We're looking at Taro, I think.
All right. Yeah, so that's a piece I did last year, right around this time. COVID had just started. And I have this skull that kind of sits over here. It's a continuing art piece. And I started drawing that. And then I started also planting all of that stuff. So on that piece, I have planted everything except for the ulu tree.
Nice.
And the theme of that piece is plant roots so deep that they become the gods your ancestors eat, right? And so it's a play on traditions and perpetuating traditions. Yeah, there are 4 skulls that represent the 4 major akua, you know, Ku, Kane, Kanaloa, and Lono. And everything is also a canoe crop, right? Those are things that they brought from Polynesia to this place and created what we know and love today. My tribute to that. That piece I did, so that was a painting that turned into way more than a painting. I did it like 3 years ago. I painted the 3 figures. There's a book called, it's a photo book called Ku'e. It's about the protests in the 70s. And that photo is, I can't remember, I think it's Dan Hardy, I think is his name. And I kind of referenced that image. That helmet is really important in my artistic life. You know, that's the reason that I started studying culture. And it's them protesting or trying to take back their own culture of the 70s, right? It's Hawaiians doing, you know, standing up for themselves. Now, I did the painting. It kind of hung on my wall right over there for a couple of years. And then Mauna Kea happened. And the paper aspect that you see there, those are the first 4 days of the protest movement. The papers just kind of started showing up, and I just added to it as it went along. And it's a real full circle thing. In the 70s, 60s, and 70s, Hawaiians stood in front of Iolani Palace for themselves and for their culture. And 2 years ago, they had to do the same thing on the mountain. And they're still doing that today everywhere. What's the next one? That was I love paint. I go through moods when I'm painting, and that's actually a finger painting. So I went to Bishop, and I stood in front of the images. I spent a lot of time when I go to Bishop. I spent a lot of time in front of the coup images in there, and I took a couple of references, and I went home and kind of did that. Like, I just wanted to see if I could do it. I like those colors, and I threw paint at it, and it's one of those art is therapy moments. Yeah, and it's old and new. That is an ongoing project. Vince actually works behind that wall. There are birds on it now. It's the old and new. Like, the problem with cultural appropriation is people don't ask questions, I think, especially as a creator. As a creator, if you're not asking questions, if you can't honor, if you don't know where the thing that you're referencing came from, then you're lazy to me. You need to ask questions. You need to do your homework. You need to pay respect to the people that came before you. That's basically that. And also, the day I started painting this, Vince came into my life. It's amazing. This is Kahekili and his warriors. So I did another piece of Keku Haupio. There's an epic battle where he holds off Kahekili's army, and in my head, this is Kahekili surveying the battlefield after. So in the background, you see canoes fleeing. That's Colonial Pu'u's army fleeing. There's fire in the background on the shore, and in the background, that's actually Lanai on fire. So when they left here, when they left Maui, they sailed to Lanai and also lit us on fire. It's just one of those things. But that's the piece that's Keku Haupio kind of stands alone. So Keku Haupio is Kamehameha's teacher. He's the guy that kind of trained Kamehameha in his young life. And there was a battle that for some reason he arrives late, and he meets the Colonial Pu'u's army in retreat, and basically tells them, "I got this," and stands in front of them. And the tiny bit of story that I found said the spears and sling stones fell like rain, and he danced between them. And he also has a one-on-one battle that I'm gonna illustrate next, right after that. Like Kahekili lets this guy leave because he's so impressed with what he did.
Wow.
Like the entire Maui army he's facing them down by himself.
Nice.
So good.
So here's Helton John Htj. So HTJ, do you want to turn on your microphone and talk about your art? I think he might be frozen. There he is. Can you hear us, HTJ?
Yeah, I can hear you. So you want me to talk about the pieces?
Yeah, if you want to. I mean, we're just enjoying your work. But yeah, if you want to talk about your skateboard collage or your next pieces, we'd be honored.
Actually, it's acrylic and spray paint.
The textures are amazing.
So there's a different. So I use different signs of Patutiki and elements of Polynesian culture. There's often reference to the nuclear fact in French Polynesia, which was a big drama for Tahiti and I'm not used to talk about my pieces actually, so I let people try to feel things.
Do you want to talk about media? Is this watercolor, acrylic?
This is watercolor and also different inks.
Oh, it's just gorgeous. Is this one on paper?
That one is a canvas, like on carton board. So there's different signs of Tiki, and it was made last year at the beginning of the COVID-19. So you have small voices cruising around.
Do you use just paintbrush? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's a mix of different things. That's it was a tiki known as the Picasso tiki that has the cross on the chest. I got it from Kanaki, a good friend artist, and I customized him. That is from the last exhibition at the Musée de Tahiti. It's the art from Rutu that was an old scene theatrical design. How to say? I don't know. I find my words. Sorry. It's like maybe 4 meters tall, and it's, for the moment it's at the Museum of Tahiti.
Wow.
But it's on the agate from Rurutu.
Oh, it's amazing. Well, gosh, you know, we have so much more we want to talk about, but I think that's maybe a good place to stop for today. I just wanted to humbly thank all of our amazing panelists, and we will make sure that we link all of your places where people can find you on the social media, and we would encourage all of our viewers and the people that watch this on YouTube later to please go and support these artists. They all have unique voices, and we honor them very much, and would love to have you join us in supporting them. And we also would encourage anyone watching to support our philanthropies that we're supporting today, which are the Lanai Art Center.org and also the Bishop Museum. So you can donate to those by hitting up Tiki Oasis and sending money to the Tiki Oasis PayPal. But once again, thank you so much to our panelists for sharing your amazing artwork and mana with us today.
Thanks, Tom. And
Thank you guys. You guys are all awesome.
Much.
Amazing work, everybody. Beautiful.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much to Tom, all of our panelists. This was such a treat. Thank you so much. Yeah, and thank all of you out there for joining us today. We hope that you'll join us next month on the second Sunday of the month at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time for Sensual Paradise 2, The Allure of Swaying Hips, where we will be exploring the dance traditions of Tahiti. If you're interested in joining the Tiki Oasis Diversity and Inclusion Council or have an idea for a future topic in our series, please email us at info@tikioasis.com. Until next month, we'll see you then.